We'll just ignore that.
Skinny, do you think you could be? Do you think you can have a habit and still despise that habit, and you could rant about it, or would it make you a hypocrite?
I don't know. I'd have to think about it.
I'm here to white knight you, Rainy.
I don't think there's a
So,
problem with ranting about.
If for example, if I was addicted to, sorry, I didn't hear you. Go on, Stargate.
I said, see, there's a problem with ranting about something that you're doing habitually, but it's like if you're trying to defend it and there's no good reason for it, especially when you're judging other people for the same thing or worse.
Is he defending her? Because I
don't
thought
know.
he was just talking about how prostitutes or whatever hiring.
No, he's talking about how Stargate has a porn addiction.
Oh, okay.
But he doesn't criticize himself, his addictions, like his hookers and marijuana.
Just to be clear, I gave you a reason why porn would be bad. I explained to you.
It's crafty. What up, dog?
You don't agree with me, or what? What I said?
I think you could have porn addiction and still criticize it and still be aware of how bad it could, in my opinion. Obviously, there's a fine line of you becoming a hypocrite. If you're like
Rainy, you're not. Let me ask you a few questions actually. You're not for that slut culture shit, right? You're not for that. As a Muslim, you're probably more like modest. You're for dressing modestly, not dressing like a slut. Is that your style?
I don't know what that means. What's a slut culture?
Like, what's your style? What's your way of living? Do you dress modestly, or do you let your tits hang out? You're like, your butt cheek showing?
Is this line of questioning leading somewhere?
No, it's
not
JonJon. It's
just
never
trying to
leads
ask.
anywhere.
I'm just trying to know what your position is.
Well,
I was trying to figure out what your position is.
I would assume you would know how I would dress since you criticized me looking like a letterbox or whatever you said last time, right? So I'm guessing you already know I dress modestly.
The only thing I said last time, I asked you, I said, why do you think it is Muslim men cover their women up? And then you never answered. But that's fine. I'm here to white knight today.
Saying that
I'm on your side. I'm going to white knight you so fucking hard.
You're not on her side, bro.
I don't
Balls
understand.
deep.
I was just asking Skinny P a question. I'm not like on any side.
Listen, the point is listen, Muslim women are not really that degenerate at all. Like, they're really modest.
Some of them
fucking
are.
not for that slut culture at all. And let me just say, I don't agree with them being covered up necessarily, but I think that that's a very attractive feature.
So you agree with so JonJon, you agree with slut culture.
Let me be clear. Rainy, a lot of the attention you would get from the guys on Discord and shit like that, what they found most attractive about you is that you were some Muslim, de facto Muslim. So you come across as some goody girl in terms of your sexuality and slutty shit like that, right? You're pretty goody relatively, especially to Americans. But so that's what's the most, like, not just you, but that's the most attractive feature to men in general. I think that's the next point I was trying to make, is that when it comes to slut culture versus dressing modestly, you can get the wrong attention. The attention you get from dressing like a slut, I would say, is bad attention. And just to be clear, I think that girls who dress modestly, I think men find those girls actually to be more attractive in some sense, right?
Can you knock that off, JonJon? Could you knock that off, please?
I think so. What I was trying to get out of you, Rainy, because I think a lot of times, Rainy, you try to give off that message that it's not okay to be a slut, things like that, and then you just get constant pushback, like "fuck you, Rainy." It's not that, it's actually empowering for a woman to get gangbanged at a club or at a house party. If a girl gets fucked by 7 dudes, the more dudes, the merrier. The more dudes just means she's more empowered, right? Them all the way. I don't agree with that message, and I'm not sure Rainy does either. And Rainy sucks at arguing, so I'm here to white knight. Like, what you gonna say about that shit, Brenda? You feeling froggy? I'm basically a conservative, pretty much. So my views are pretty much already in line with this shit.
Did you do coke along with your marijuana?
Yeah,
no, I just got a good night's sleep, bud.
She left, JonJon.
I'm on my phone, so I can never tell. You gotta let me know.
She left.
But you ain't gonna say shit about that, Brenda. I'm a fucking conservative, bud.
She left, John.
I know. I'm talking to you. Rainey isn't. Let's just to be clear. Rainey sucks at arguing, so I didn't expect her to offer anything. I was just here to
Well, I think that you drove her away. That's what I think happened.
I don't give a fuck. Fuck
No,
Rainey.
of course not. You don't give a fuck about anything, do you?
I didn't want to hear her ask you guys stupid fucking questions.
But you say stupid things all day.
Be like really bad background noise.
I think you're doing white knighting not correctly.
The only thing I'm trying to white knight is the underlying conservative message that she would, that rests within
What's
her
the
rhetoric.
underlying conservative message, JonJon?
That women should think that the body is sacred, sex is sacred, and that this slut culture and encouraging slut culture is wrong.
Where is that in conservative written? Because I could imagine people on the left thinking that the body is sacred, that human lives are sacred. I think people can think that on either side of the political divide.
Well, conservatives are religious, right?
Well, you're not answering my question.
Well, most conservatives are Christian.
You're still not answering my question.
Well, Christians, their views are in line with what I just espoused.
No, they're not necessarily. No.
Christians think that the sex in the body is sacred.
And like I said, people on the left can also think that sex and the body and human lives are sacred.
Yeah, but the problem, Brenda, that may be true. I don't know, but the problem.
Right. So it's not a distinguish. It's not. It's not what makes you conservative.
You connect onto the meaning of the mind, and you try to help me understand, right? If a girl goes to a party, gets drunk, or doesn't even get drunk, is perfectly aware, and she has sex with 30 men, and pussy's loose, she records it, makes tons of money. You don't think would you consider this woman empowerment? Because that's what I don't understand. Because that's where I can't really get on board. Because I think you are.
I don't think there's anybody.
This is feminism at its finest, right?
Where is this giant straw man that you're talking to right now?
I have no idea.
Like what? Who are you talking to? Who said that, JonJon?
This is the reasoning right here. Listen, it's something like this.
No. Who said it, JonJon? Who said it? Who are you talking to?
A Canadian.
Gus isn't here.
No, but I'm just trying to say that people on the left actually believe this shit.
Because you think it's easier just to talk to. That seems like a real pussy move, talking to what Gus said.
If you don't think this is the case, then Gus would be Exhibit A.
Why are you talking to Gus? Gus isn't here.
Just to steel man this side of position, right?
Just to be a pussy, right?
No, you got to put their arguments up the best you can.
Right. Who is they?
I would say
it's a straw man, JonJon. That's a straw man.
No, it's not.
Yes,
listen,
it
I've
is.
heard people say this. I've heard people who are
I don't care. Even if somebody said it, it's still a straw man.
By definition, that's not true. That's
no,
not
by definition, it is true.
Their view correctly,
it is
it's not
true.
A straw man.
What one person says isn't determinative for an entire movement or ideology or belief.
Yeah, but so it's impossible. Is it impossible to define the movement then? How do we define the movement?
By the general principles that they generally espouse. Yes.
So you can.
By general principles, not by specific claims.
So in other words, all you can do is generalize here.
Yes.
When you're talking about a group of people, yeah, that's when you have to do that.
So let me ask you guys a question. Do you think that there is no objective reference to the meaning of language? And if
what are you on about?
What the fuck? How did we get to that?
What kind of bath salts are you on?
Well, I mean, you can let Declan answer. I mean, you gotta shut up. Declan, what do you think about that?
Well, there's some objective. When you say objective, meaning the language, what exactly do you mean?
Like when it comes to definitions and words and the meaning of language, for example, the claim would be that we impose meaning to the language.
Yeah, I don't think that
objective reference,
definitions
right?
are objective. I think they're subjective.
Right.
I think
Because,
we ascribe meaning to words.
Exactly. So that, as an entailment of all this, this is like there is no this as an entailment of what you just said. You would believe that there is no objective reference to the meaning of language at all.
That's
You
not
just said we
that
impose
doesn't
meaning
entail.
to language.
That's not an entailment.
Well, look, I think that like once it's been decided upon what a word means, we can look at like things that are objective, such as references that give us like the like a dictionary, for example. Like we sort of decide in like a weird way that it's objective and that it's true that we all agree on it. So we would say that like cat means a feline who's furry and falls under these species of cat.
Yeah, but
right?
there's this thought experiment that, just to be clear, this claim that I'm espousing that you've agreed with, this is a claim that emerged out of the post-structuralists, which is a crowd, the post-structuralist camp, which emerged out of the
What the hell
postmodernism.
is he talking about?
So what they would say, the post-structuralists,
The same thing he always does. He's going to go blah, blah, postmodern, blah, 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 atheism, secular humanism. This is where he's going to end up. The same thing that he does every time he talks.
If you don't like it, that's fine. But give Declan just a chance to respond.
You're not talking to what Declan said.
Okay, Declan, what do you think I haven't addressed, Declan?
Wait, what? What are you asking me?
I'm not addressing you. He said I'm not addressing you.
Yeah, I just don't know where, like, what you said, how it, like, tails on to my response to you. Like, where are you going with this?
I know about the claim that claims that emerged out of the post-structuralist camp, and I referenced some of these claims.
What were those claims,
and premises
JonJon?
to you?
What were those claims?
You agreed with them. So I just found that interesting, and I wanted to explore that.
Yeah, I don't think it's. You're gonna have to stop and let. You're gonna have to stop and let other people speak. Okay, look. I don't think it's controversial to say that we ascribe meaning to utterances. That's not controversial. It's not. At some point in the word cat, we came up before the word cat. We came up with a k sound and an ah sound and a t sound, and we just decided that when we put those things together, there's a certain referent in the world, and we call it that. It's not as if there's some golden book like that's objective with a capital O, and the utterance cat is in there somewhere, sort of like scribbled down by like this big objective pen, and now for all eternity, cat means that feline. That's a weird position to hold.
Okay, so just to be clear, Brendel was asking what claim that I think you're agreeing with, right? And like just to clarify, the post-structuralists claimed that there is no objective reference to the meaning of language, and that we actually impose meaning to language. That was the post-structuralist claim that emerged out of the postmodern crowd. Because the post-structuralists
post-structuralism emerged out of structuralism. It emerged
like the way I was told, the way I've been explained.
JonJon.
Post-structuralism was basically postmodernism, but they tried to have more utility.
The better criticism is, what does any of this matter? You're just talking meta. Who cares?
Because the reason why it matters is because
you're not talking to what Declan said.
It probably doesn't matter to Declan because I think
you're unable to have a conversation.
I don't want to straw man Declan, but I think that most people would fall into an extreme version of relativism. It may even lead to things that I don't like epistemological nihilism, for example. Like when you acknowledge what Declan just acknowledged, right? It can lead you to things like epistemological nihilism.
I'm an epistemological nihilist.
That just doesn't follow.
Declan of doing that.
That just doesn't follow at all. To say that somehow one believes that language is subjective or relative does not mean that somehow everything is up for grabs at that point. It doesn't mean, for example, that I can't know anything because I believe that we've just agreed upon what utterances mean. How do you come to that conclusion?
I didn't make that claim.
Yeah,
that
you did.
You can't know.
Yeah,
anything.
you did.
No, I don't. If I did,
You said that
I would
holding the
retract
position that I do leads to epistemical nihilism.
Well, what I meant by that was that I think that this leads you to relativizing everything.
That's exactly what I
Not everyone
said.
does it. Not everyone does it. Yeah, I think you're right. I think you wasn't too far off. But let me clarify. Like, it doesn't necessarily, like, just, I'll give you what you want. It doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be an epistemological nihilist. I agree with that. I don't want to argue about that. But I think that the real issue, the real boogeyman, it would be relativism. Moral relativism, cultural relativism, epistemological
That
relativism.
these
This
things
is
don't have
the
anything to
demon,
do with
right?
each other. Moral
And I think that
relativism doesn't
when
have to do
people
with.
talk about, I think when people acknowledge what you did, Declan, about language and imposing meaning to language, sometimes they can, start concluding that if everything's just subjective, they'll throw in words like
But
merely. If
that's the
everything's
thing,
just
is that
merely
sure
subjective.
you'll have stupid people. No one's saying that you're not going to have stupid
So how
people,
would you argue
but
against them then?
holding that somehow, like I said, that I have a belief that somehow like utterances and meanings are sort of subjective or relative. There's no logical line that you could draw there to say, okay, well, now everything's up for grabs, everything's relative.
Well, I don't know what you mean, other than maybe there's some kind of universal nature at play, or universal language at play. It's universal in some sense.
What?
So how are you rejecting the idea that it's all just relative?
Well, I mean, I hold that, for example, that there is an objective world, right? I think that when I say there's a cat there, that cat exists independent of my mind or my attitude or my beliefs. I just believe that the utterances that I spew forth from my mouth, um, the meaning behind those utterances are relative, right? That the utterances themselves are relative. That's all I'm saying. It doesn't
Is
follow
there
because it
but is
doesn't
there
follow.
any
It
kind
doesn't
of
follow. It
what
doesn't
I'm
follow.
asking?
It doesn't follow that because I hold that somehow now I have to question whether the cat is contingent upon my beliefs or upon me or upon a collective.
Okay, but I hope this isn't a segue, but what I'm trying to get at is I could take Joseph Campbell as an example in the universality of the archetypes, right? Like the archetypes are just some kind of acknowledgement that there's some kind of universal nature. And I
That
want
just
you to
begs
take
the
the same
question.
concept. Listen, I want you to take the same concept and apply it to the language. Maybe there's some kind of universal nature in the language in terms of the meaning of the language.
I don't know what that
I just don't know.
means.
Yeah, it's probably not a good way of wording it. Um, I just want to point this out, that in the postmodernists concluded something that I actually agree with. Just to be clear, I agree with some of the things the postmodernists say and reject others. But one thing I agree with that has led me into like pragmatism when it comes to epistemology and things like that is that I think, Declan, you agree with this. You almost mentioned it, sort of appealed to it, so to speak. Is the idea that the world comes to us filtered through our senses, our sensory perception, and it's therefore dummied down. It is filtered, and as a byproduct of this, we can never actually know the objective world, but which would
No, I don't
exist,
believe that at
right?
all. I don't believe that at all.
Well, what would you mean? Like we can have like a scientific instrument or something?
No, what I mean is just to say that um, I don't think that it follows that because I'm sensing something, because whatever stimuli that is separate from me is somehow going through my senses, that means that I can't experience the world as it is. I just don't see how that follows. That seems to, I think, beg the question. I think it might beg the question.
It's because the idea is that the real world exists, but because you're acknowledging that the world comes to you filtered through your sensory perception, because you're acknowledging that you're not actually getting actuality, you're getting something.
He's not acknowledging that. That's where you fuck up.
You're getting quality, you're getting human consciousness or human experience.
That's where you fucked up, JonJon.
The word there that you need to change is filtered, because that there is a hidden premise that you're using in your argument, which is just to say that filtered equals objective world actually changed in some meaningful way by my experiencing it.
No,
and when I'm telling you, JonJon, I hate that I had to keep on doing that because it's really annoying. What I'm telling you is that I don't believe that there's any there's any sort of like filter there where I'm experiencing the world in a way that is not true, that is not in line with how the world actually is.
Well, I just want to correct you. I'm not saying that I think that the world actually objectively changes in any sense because of the way your brain interprets things, right? I'm actually just trying to say something like the real world may exist, right? There may be some kind of objective world, but what we have is something like conscious experience, human qualia. That's our reality. And the world, the objective world, is coming to us filtered through that biological sensory perception. And I think the premise, or if there's anything that I would have you acknowledge or grant me, would be that our human experience, our human qualia, or our conscious experience, we as human beings, we are extremely susceptible to hallucinations, things like that.
You said that our human experience is what?
I said that our human qualia, human experience, that's our reality, pretty much.
By definition, human experience would be a form of reality, yeah.
Do you have something in mind besides experience, JonJon?
I don't know what you mean by that.
Exactly.
Like, I'm just trying to point out that that's what we mean by like consciousness. But the point is that I don't think that when the world comes into us filtered through our senses, that the world actually changes or anything like that. I just think that the world may be real, but it does come to us kind of dummied down, kind of filtered in some sense because of our sensory perception. Like, for example, we can't see all colors, right? We can't see all wavelengths or whatever. That would be an example. So that means that we are acknowledging, here's the thing that I think we all should have to acknowledge here, that I would have to argue that you guys would acknowledge, would be that our sensory perception is actually indeed limited, right? Our senses
we can't see ultraviolet. We can't see ultraviolet.
No. This is why I asked Declan, what does he mean when he rejected it? Does he mean that we have scientific instruments that tell us what actual reality is like? Like, for example, a machine that can show us what the other colors look like? That would be a good example.
I think where your misstep is that you think that somehow, because our sensory perception is limited, that means that what we are receiving is inadequate or is inaccurate, and that doesn't follow. The question on the table is question on the table is whether what we are perceiving is in fact accurate or not accurate. Because if it's not, or if it is accurate, then that goes against your claim. No one here is sitting here disputing. No one here is sitting here. No one is sitting here disputing the fact that our sensory perception is limited.
Good. Because that's all I asked you guys to grant me.
No, what are you talking about? That you never asked that.
I did. I asked you guys to grant me, or at least acknowledge, or that I would at least argue for this, that our sensory perception is indeed limited, and there are some entailments of acknowledging that.
What entails from that?
That, for example, when you look up at the sky, there are going to be certain colors you can't see because your eyes are limited.
So,
your visual field is limited. Do you agree
awesome.
that that's the case?
Awesome. Yeah.
Right.
Awesome.
So do you
Agree all around. What?
Right. So guys, you agree that those other lights, the wavelengths or whatever that we can't see, you still agree those are real, just because we can't see them or experience them.
Yeah, but it doesn't follow that because we can't perceive certain things, that somehow how what we are experiencing is in fact skewed. Do you understand the distinction there?
Well, just to be clear, I'm more of a pragmatist, so I don't really get caught up in these weeds too much. I take, like I said before, I actually mentioned this.
Do you understand the distinction there? Do you understand the distinction between those two concepts?
I think so.
Okay, imagine I have $5 in quarters. Okay. This is going to sound ridiculous, but this sort of goes to the heart of it. Imagine I have $5 in quarters. Now, does that mean that I can't count $5 in quarters just because I don't have $1,000 in quarters? JonJon?
I think you're misunderstanding where I'm trying to come from.
Can you answer the question?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. Then you understand. It's the same thing.
Well, I think that the pragmatists, which were pretty brilliant people, they acknowledge that, like, we can't know the ultimate nature of reality, for example, because of this which you reject. They acknowledged that the world does come to us filtered through our sensory perception, and as a direct entailment of that, we could never understand things like the ultimate nature of reality.
John, did you read any of that stuff JHC sent you on
Pragmatism? Hold on. Let me finish.
No,
just to be clear,
didn't.
The pragmatists critiqued Eastern philosophers deeply on this, in the sense that the pragmatists thought that these Eastern philosophers who got all the credit, right? They thought that they were engaging in fruitless endeavor, that it is fucking pointless to try to ask questions like, what is the ultimacy of reality? Ultimate this, ultimate that, absolute truth. They said, listen, guys, in virtue of things like the world coming into us filtered through our conscious perception, we know it's limited, things like that. We can't actually know those questions or answer those things. So this is like pragmatism, right? Utility. Fun fact, before we move on, pragmatism is actually it's the greatest philosophy of all time in terms of its utility and the things that it's brought forth. And it was a philosophy that was pretty much buried.
So are you a postmodernist
clear,
now,
it's an American philosophy, right? Who would have known that, right? Who would have known that this is an American philosophy, that Americans put forth the greatest philosophy of all time? No one
are you a
right?
postmodernist now, JonJon?
The European philosophers get all the credit. There's reasons for that. But
JonJon.
What?
Are you a postmodernist now?
No, I describe myself as a postmodernist.
What the fuck does that mean?
Or a post-intellectualist.
Post-intellectual? I agree. You are a post-intellectual.
Re-modernist. I'm a re-modernist.
A re-modernist.
Because we're going to throw away postmodernism. Yeah, we're going to throw this shit away.
So you're going to throw away pragmatism. You're going to throw away pragmatism then.
No, what I'm saying is I'm going to reject some things from postmodernism and keep very little.
Because
And integrate
pragmatism is
thinking into something better.
postmodern, JonJon. You know that, right?
I know that, of course. I know Richard Rorty was considered a postmodernist.
Yeah. So you're rejecting pragmatism then.
I just said that there are some things about postmodernism that I will reject.
What are you keeping?
The
What are you
pragmatists like
keeping,
Richard
and what are
Rorty,
you
I don't
throwing
really
out?
reject a lot of what he said.
What are you keeping?
I'm throwing out relativism, epistemological relativism. I'm going towards the Richard Rorty route. I know a lot of people critique Richard Rorty of being a
Yeah, he
relativist
is.
himself,
Yeah, he is.
but I heard it straight from the horse's mouth. I've heard Richard Rorty say straight up that he's not stupid enough to fall for the relativistic trap, that he is not a relativist. And I think I understand that. I think I understand what he means. I think he's right. He's
Okay,
not
cool.
falling
What
for
does
it.
he mean by that? What does he mean by that? I'd like to understand.
It's something like this. Truth. This is why it's so important to acknowledge the sensory perception thing, because the next step would be acknowledging. I'm going to mention something that I think is the most cookie cutter aspect of this, because maybe you've heard of this. The idea that it's true enough. There's ideas in epistemology that it's just true enough. And I think that it ties to the idea that what truth is actually an evolutionary adaptive tool. Truth is a tool that we use to navigate the world. And the reason why he's not getting caught up into relativism is because he's like, he would be, for example, he would be on board with Joseph Campbell. He would think that there's some kind of universality to it all, and there would be something at what would make it objective would be like that, the fact that there's some kind of driving force, right, behind the language. Like the postmodernists would say that power is the only real thing. Power is driving language. We impose meaning to language. So it would get into that more pragmatic, evolutionary lens where you're like, okay, truth is a tool. There actually is something to what we call truth. It can actually be mapped out to the landscape pretty efficiently. In other words, for example, there's concepts of truth that Brett Weinstein, an evolutionary theorist, evolutionary biologist, coined, which is metaphorical truth. And this, like, metaphorical truth would be a truth nested, a pragmatic truth nested within Darwinian theory. For example,
What's a
pragmatic
metaphor?
truth.
Because a metaphor is literally something that is not true.
Well, just to define what what Brett Weinstein has coined metaphorical truth, he says that it's a statement that is scientifically false, but if you act as if it is true, it helps you survive. It has tons of utility. It would be metaphorically true. And he says that religions are metaphorically true. That, religions are littered with archetypical content, storytelling, and it's not objectively scientifically true, clearly, but it is metaphorically true. And I think that this ties into the pragmatic idea of epistemology, that it's true enough. I think this is where the main confusion gets about objectivism and relativism, because if it's true enough, that means like, in other words, when we talk about what I'm talking about right now, it's almost like we could never actually reach the objective truth. We just don't know. It's only going to be good enough because of our limits, right? In conceptualization and things like that. Like, yes, we have great tools. Like, for example, Richard Rorty said that he wishes the pragmatists never touched epistemology. He wishes that they never said anything about it. In fact, he wished that the pragmatist just explained that when it comes to absolute truth and things like that, we can't talk about it. No one knows anything about that. But what we can tell you is what truth is and how we use it. And most importantly, we can tell you about justification. So pragmatism has a lot to say about justification, why it is we believe what we believe. So this is vital. This is extremely useful when, crafting an epistemology, right? I think I've blabbered on too much, so I'm gonna slow it down. But it is interesting.